Thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
You've had a long career as a triple threat, as a writer, director, and producer in not only television, but in musical theater and in feature films. And I just wanted to start it off by asking how you got started in directing and why you chose directing in particular as one of your main arteries for expression.
It was not my first choice. I was a television, I wouldn't say I was an addict, but it was my babysitter as a child. Both my parents worked. They were factory workers. I lived in Chicago. I have 6 brothers and sisters. And so what we did in the afternoons while we were waiting for our parents to come home was watch television. So I think I've seen every episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show and Andy and Mayberry and those fine period shows you young people have probably missed. But that did sort of seed something in my head a little bit, especially, certain shows. Like, oddly enough, now that I think about it, Andy Griffith and Andy Mayberry has probably come back to me more than any other show, because even in that time, they were trying to tell us something and not just entertain us. They were always trying to say, this is the way we could be. And I became increasingly interested in the possibilities that television could do that as my career went on. So I thought I would be a composer. That was my first choice. I still write music to this day. I've written a lot of music. I went to college and wrote 13 musicals in college. And then I went to New York to become a composer. That didn't exactly pan out because it's just very difficult to make a life when you're writing in the musical theater unless you're really great, and I was just okay. So I went into advertising and became a creative supervisor after being a copywriter. So for 12 years, I worked in advertising, which is another thing that's really helped me as a director, because as a creative supervisor, you have all these different teams of artists coming to you with their ideas, and you had to, in some cases disappoint them, but in other cases elevate their work and work with them and make them feel like they wanted to come back the next day. And that's very much like running a writing room, I found. Once upon a time, someone came to me and said in New York, when I was working in advertising, that there were virtually no black directors directing music videos, but there were all these black artists. And this person, who was not black, said, let's create a company where we can have black directors, and you can be one of them, and we'll represent other people. And we'll try to get crew members who may not be in the union yet, but can get experience in various different crew capacities. And then when it comes time, the people will not say that they don't have any experience. We'll be non-union, and, I didn't realize I'd be a future union president at that point. But I said, non-union, great. So that's access for everybody. And this company would be called Black and White Television. And so I left my job in advertising to this fledgling music video company. And for 6 months, we didn't get any clients, which was sad, but was just basically no one hired us. But eventually I did get one client, and that client happened to be LL Cool J and Russell Simmons, and then that started a career in music videos that ended up with me directing music videos for, everybody from Bob Dylan and Harry Connick to the New Kids on the Block and Janet Jackson. But I ended up doing 8 videos for Todd for LL Cool J, which really became my reel. And when John Wells saw that collection of music videos, John Wells, who was not at that point a major producer, he was just a producer, he hired me to direct a show, a television show. He said, I think you can do it because all your music videos tell stories. So he hired me to direct a show called Angel Street, which was a short-lived CBS drama starring Robin Givens, where there were 2 one black, one white homicide cops, lady cops, as he used to call them, in Chicago. And it lasted 6 episodes, but I ended up doing 2 of them. Including the one that I had to direct after the show was canceled. And those of you who've worked in television know that is always the worst episode because you're making it, but it's never going to air, and it never did. And everyone is completely frustrated. They know it's their last paycheck, and it's incredibly
The producers are saying, get out.
Yeah, get out. It's been 10-hour days.
Wrap it up.
So I did that, and then I just did a couple of other little episodes, but I didn't work very much. And then John's next show, though, happened to be ER, where he hired me again. And that's why you can never make enemies in this business, because you're working with John, who is a nobody producer, basically. And then the next show he does is ER, which became an American television juggernaut. And he hired me again because he remembered that I had done a good job on that first show. And that really launched my career. That took me to NYPD Blue and other things. And I left music behind and advertising, and the rest is television history.
Let's watch Paris's sizzle reel. I think that gives a pretty good
Let's
visual.
see some sizzle.
Let's get some sizzle on. I want to seize on something that you talked about a little earlier when you talked about relationships and keeping relationships alive and active, because you never know what's going to happen. But it also brings to mind just the pathway into directing, into television, or any medium for that matter, because you never know what's going to precede that. And people always wonder about, well, how do I get in? How do I end up breaking into that barrier? And I think that it's really about doing work. It's about doing the work, doing good work, and about always exercising your creative energy into whatever you're doing. And I know that for you came from your love of musical theater, and then eventually through your music video work, and that's where John Wells had seen your talent and obviously wanted to give you the opportunity. But once you get there, once you get that avenue into television, it can become a political minefield. And if you could talk just for a second about what it was to come into television when you did, and how you navigated what can be difficult, both from a political point of view and from a budgetary point of view, and all the expectations that you're expected to hit as a director, and the restrictions and the whole world that episodic television provides as a landscape.
Wow.
In 10 words or less.
That was deep.
You like that?
I'll answer part of that question, which is the part that I like. When I first started in television, I was one of the very few black directors, and I was also relatively young, and I also had virtually no experience doing what I was doing. So I did three things. I was honest about my lack of experience, and I was honest about the things I didn't know. So I enlisted a lot of people to help me. One way I thought about approaching this is if I know more than I know, and I will just pose and people will believe me and I'll get through it, which is kind of how I got through music videos. But when it came to television, I just realized there was so much about the process that I just didn't have the experience to know, that I depended on my ADs and my cinematographers and my producers really, more than anybody to get me through it. And I didn't try to pretend like I didn't need their help. I often privately would say, I really need your help on how to break down this scene. I don't really know what the best schedule is. I'm not saying this out loud, but I'm saying this to you. Can you help me? And that has stood me in very good stead. The second thing I did was I tried to prepare like crazy because I didn't know as much as I could. So I felt I had to spend hours every night going over the stuff and getting ready because I didn't want to be caught without an idea or without a plan. So I overdid that. And you'll see later on when we tell you the 10 secrets of directing in television. Overdoing that preparation is one of the secrets that stood me in good stead. And the third thing that I did was I finished every single job to the very end. And when I was president of the Directors Guild, we found a lot of directors felt that since doing a director's cut, it may not be used, and what the point was, they would often leave the project, go to someplace else, do something else. And I always stayed and I rearranged my schedule so I could make the best director's cut possible. And a lot of times that cut was rejected and recut, but sometimes, like on ER, it almost went on the air cut for cut, because I had spent so much time toiling over the scenes and been so meticulous about the script and the moments that we talked about before. So I think those are three big things that I did in the early stages that now I'm too lazy to do. But that actually were probably the things that started me going, that gave me a better start, I would say.
Work ethic.
Yeah, it's work ethic. Yeah. That was it.
Yeah. It's super important in any art form. Getting into, I want to jump into a scene analysis with you.
That's hard.
Yeah, you're gonna love this. So I want to talk about a scene that you directed from NYPD Blue, from an episode called Hearts and Souls, which you won an Emmy for.
I did.
Yeah. And I'd like to
for the entire episode, not just for the
scene we're
gonna show. No, I think it was for the whole thing. Yeah.
And I'd love for you to talk about what was it about this episode that was creatively inspiring and challenging, and the whole process of what getting through this episode was for you.
Well, quickly, those of you who NYPD Blue was a long time ago now, although it lasted for 13 years. It was a very original cop show at the time. It was filled with a lot of sex. It pushed the boundaries of profanity. It became quite controversial when it aired on ABC. Stephen Bochco was a very powerful producer at that time and was able to give them the show on Tuesday to air on Tuesday night without interference. That was his deal. So it was a very pushy, dramatic kind of show, muscular successor to Hill Street Blues. At the particular time when I came on board, around season 4, they had gotten rid of David Caruso. They had replaced him with Jimmy Smits as the partner to Dennis Franz's character. And they were oil and water. Dennis Franz was basically this racist, Queens guy, and Jimmy Smits was this Latino and French in the show partner that came and worked with him. But over time, they bonded. And as seasons went on, they saw what they could see in each other, and they really demonstrated the adage that there's two kinds of people in this world. There's the people that I know, and then there's the people that I love rather than the people that I don't know yet. And that was what that show became about. It became about transcending your prejudices and your biases and being able to see beyond them. Well, when Jimmy wanted to leave the show, David Milch begrudgingly said, I'm not going to just have you hit by a bus like we do nowadays. I want to tell the story of actually my father's death, who had heart disease, and it was kind of a slow death. This is David Milch speaking, and he wanted to use Jimmy's character to talk about what had happened with his dad, which I was very moved by. So it took 6 episodes for Jimmy Smits to die. If those of you who watch this will remember, he got heart disease. He was up for a transplant. He finally gets the transplant, and in this episode, Hearts and Souls, the transplant is rejected, and he gets an infection and he dies. So I was given this episode not because I wanted to do it, but because Stephen Bochco decided that the next episode, which introduced Ricky Schroeder as the new character, had to be directed by their best director, who was Mark Tinker, who was also on staff with me. We were both producers at NYPD Blue at the time. So he said, since Mark is going to introduce Ricky, you have to do Jimmy Smits' last episode. So I said, okay, little did I know this would completely change the trajectory of my career, and I would win the second Emmy in 2 years for directing this particular episode. But I was given it, I read the script, and I started bawling, and I thought this is going to be very difficult, not just for me, but for the cast, who very much loves Jimmy Smits. So what we're going to show you are the last few minutes of that episode, and those of you who have seen it, you'll remember what we went through. It was a 90-minute episode. He is on his deathbed, and he's having, some people call them hallucinations. Some people say he's seen a bit of the afterlife. He's seen a son that they had, that in his wishes they had, but he and Diane, his wife, tried to conceive a child. She miscarried, and he never had the child. But in this vision, just before he dies, he's able to see that boy. And the voice that you hear is his friend, his sort of uncle character, who is sort of taking him to the afterlife and reminding him of the great things that he did on Earth. So I'll tell you why it's done in this particular style, which is completely different from the show. The show never had done anything like this and never did anything like this again. But that how that evolved and why it became this ending is what the story's about. So I'll show you the last, 4 minutes we have of it to remind you if you've seen it, and for those of you who haven't, to experience it. One thing I forgot to explain that I normally explain before that clip is earlier in the episode, Simone, Jimmy's character, had told the doctor when he was ready to go, he would make that gesture. And it reminds me that I've often been the benefit of excellent writing. And because of the way David wrote that, all the actors had to do was as little as possible. And if there's one thing I've learned in the directing world, is if you can get out of the way, you can make something very memorable. And we rehearsed it once, that sequence in the bed, because the cast was crying like I am now. So I said, let's not cry, let's just shoot. And we'll get the cameras in place, and I'll try to put you through this the minimal amount possible, and we'll film it, and then we'll go away. So it actually, for NYPD Blue, was a very short day. But as you can see, the actors were struggling, not just as their characters, but as themselves, to hold back their emotion. And David had put all sorts of emotional tricks, and I called them, in the scene, because of the gesture that the audience knew meant he was done, and he pulls off the oxygen mask, and her misinterpretation of it, she says, "What do you want, Bobby? Do you want me to take your ring?" And then he nods, sort of, "Yes, that's what I want you to believe." She takes the ring and she says, "Look, Bobby." He looks at her, he smiles, one tear, which Jimmy Smits did once. And it's not in the script. One tear came out of his eye. And we filmed it because we happened to be putting the cameras in that place when that happened. So she believes that that's what he wanted. He knows that he's ready to go. And the audience is left with all the feeling. And so, as I've often told actors when they're in these emotional scenes, you have to allow the audience to invade the story, and you have to get out of the way. And Jimmy Smits, God bless him, is a master of getting out of the way. He just did the minimal possible. He had studied the breath. He had gone to people and seen them in cancer wards. He did his homework like he always does. But then he just was present in the character in that moment, and I just had to not wear them out and keep them together. And unlike NYPD Blue style, which those of you who saw it, it was a very searchy camera, all of that got slowed down. All of it became smoother and more respectful, and we returned to the same shots over and over again, and we were closer and tighter than we'd ever been before. And Mike Post, who wrote the theme for NYPD Blue and Hill Street Blues and so many other shows, the ka-ching of Law and Order, scored that himself, which normally he wasn't doing that much because he was so rich, he just stayed at home. But in this particular case, he scored it with that sort of bagpipey, sort of warped part of the NYPD Blue theme, which if you know the theme music of it, that's sort of a part of the sound of it. And when it was all over, Steven said, "I don't want to go to black like we did every episode. I just don't want to go to black. Let's go to white." So that's the only time in the 200 plus episodes that NYPD Blue fades to white and their credits actually are in black. He just felt it didn't feel right, and he was absolutely right. So part of the reason why I love being in television is because of the collaboration of so many people like that. Just doing their part and staying out of other stuff, and in many cases allowing you, when you view it, as I am again, be wrecked because they're creating a space for you to have an experience. And in my regular master class, which is much longer than this one, I always say that television is an experience that creates an experience. It is the experience of making it, which is very different from the experience you have. Nevertheless, that's what we're doing it for. We're doing it so you, sitting in a room in your house individually, will have an experience. We're not doing it for no apparent reason. So this is one of those examples of one of the times I'm proudest of accomplishing that.
In the sequence, we go into visions for Jimmy's character. Were those written in the script as we see here in the final cut?
They were. Nick Wooten, who also collaborated in the script, and David had a specific idea that they would visualize Pops, this character. Unfortunately, Pops, the character, was not available and didn't fly even if he was available. And we were in LA, and NYPD Blue was shot almost entirely in LA, and he was in New York. So I then had the vision that the visions would be out of focus and that we would record his voice and use the out of focus guy sort of shuffling around as sort of a he can't quite see him thing. And then Simone's roof, which is an actual roof where he lived, was in New York. And occasionally, once or twice a season, we would go there and shoot scenes. But we couldn't go there in this episode, so we built a fictitious resemblance of that. And they had never done anything like this on that show. They had never had a shot where the detectives were just sort of beautifully posed on top of the roof, beautifully lit, looking very noble. It was just so out of the style of realism of the whole show. But David said, I want him to see them the way that he sees them. I want him to see them as, his heroes. So we created those vibes, and the little boy was his son and all that stuff. All those were very specifically scripted, though.
And how closely is the final cut to what you cut as the director?
It's very close. I had a little bit more going back to the past, going back to the visions. But they smartly reduced that as it went on. If you'd seen the 3 minutes before that, there was more of the visions up on the roof, and they reduced it and took away, and I think that was the right choice. Sometimes I'm not the brightest working in my director's cut, but they felt that now we have to start staying with them. Now we have to get off the roof. Now we have to be with Kim Delaney's character. We have to be with Jimmy Smits, and the visions are receding for him, and they should also recede for us.
Wow, it's really beautifully done. Affecting all these years later.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's awesome. I want to move into...
something happy. Oh, I'm exhausted right now.
I want to move into...
I normally honestly don't watch it. I normally walk away, but because they stuck me in the front row, I said, I can't really leave. People will think that I don't care. So I stayed there, and I should not have watched it. That was my mistake.
You're welcome. I want to move into a different scene that you've directed from an LL Cool J video. Mama Said Knock You Out, which was a completely different kind of experience than NYPD Blue.
It was.
And this was a much more challenging experience in your career that you had to hurdles that you had to climb over. So can you frame this for us?
Yeah, everything is not as sweet as NYPD Blue. Everything doesn't work out quite as well. This was a video. I was in the business of doing videos for Todd, for LL Cool J. We call him Todd. This was the 9th video, and it was done on a Sunday. We did the 8th videos I did with him called Around the Way Girl on Saturday, and then we shot Mama Said Knock You Out on Sunday. That was our plan. They look very different. Around the Way Girl was shot on video, and it was deliberately looking that way. Mama Said Knock You Out was shot on black and white film, and then later colorized, as you'll see in a second. But for various reasons, Todd was not available to show up on the day of shooting, and he eventually was discovered and brought to the set about 4.5 hours later. And we did not have endless money back in the video days. It's not like we just keep shooting. So while we were waiting for him, we shot some little interstitial shots, and we lit the boxing ring with the double for a really long time. Stephen Ashley Blake, who was the DP, just finessed it because we really had nothing else to do. Someone who is here can attest to the truth of this. So when he finally showed up, we didn't have much time to shoot. I think we had about 6 or 7 hours left. And so I only had 3 or 4 takes of the performance of him doing the song Mama Said Knock You Out in the end. And I had these intercuts, and that is all. That is what I had in the bin to make the video because the day was over and everyone had to go. So let me just show you a clip. Do you guys have a clip of that, Tim? So you've just seen every bit of film I've shot, just about. And what Fred Salkin, the editor, did was he tried to assemble it into what we had traditionally done in music videos, and it just didn't work. And so sometimes there's one cut in there that's almost 30 seconds long of the performance, which took up a lot of time, which saved us. So we never did that in music videos in the late 80s and early 90s because they tended to be very cutty, but you can't be very cutty if you don't have anything to cut to. So as I was accepting the Billboard Award and the MTV Best Rap Video Award and the Best Director Award and, blasey, 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 I was thinking to myself, what a fraud. They think that I consciously chose to only have 67 cuts in the video. They think that it was a creative choice that we stayed in that angle. You never saw his eyes. That is so brilliant, Paris. I said, I would have probably shot them if I had time. So the disadvantages that became the advantages of that video are legion. And the fact that Todd is an excellent lip syncer, we never had anything out of sync. He was always right on. He'd always practiced what he was going to do. He knew exactly how he was going to perform it. The pieces that we had were very consistent. So we didn't lose a lot of the stuff. And I had time to make those little intercuts of the boxing and things like that. And then we finally got into the editing room. We showed it to Russell Simmons and to LL Cool J. They said, this is going to be an iconic video. This is going to be a video that's everyone's going to remember. I tell you it is. And I said, fat chance. We'll be lucky if MTV accepts this video. That was my thinking. And then, many years later, I'm sitting in a room being interviewed or actually trying to get a job from Tom Hanks. And he says, I just want to tell you, Mama Said Knock You Out is my favorite video. If you only knew.
So you're on the set, he's 4.5 hours late. You know how much time you have left, and you're thinking, what?
Yeah, I'm thinking my whole vision is ruined. I will not be able to deliver anything that I promised. Everyone is going to be disappointed in me. I'm going to give up myself, basically. I was really excited about the song, and I thought we had a great idea. Originally, Todd was actually going to box another human, was the original concept of the video, until a couple of days before the video, Russell Simmons says, I'm going to put Todd in the ring boxing somebody. They could hurt him, and he could hurt them. That would be very bad. So we didn't do that. So then we replaced that person with lots of people just flashing light bulbs in a dark void. And that became another thing that was, iconic about the video, but actually was not my original plan at all. So the message, if you're not getting it, is serendipity is the best possible friend. And sometimes these things that you think are disasters in the moment can end. I really believe this video is essential to giving me a career. It's one of the videos that was on that reel of videos John Wells saw when he gave me my first job. And it gave me notoriety, and it was not anything that I had originally planned. And sometimes you do just have to roll with what you've got and use the elements and put them together as best you can. And I found over and over in my career, when I've been up against deadlines, when I haven't had the equipment that I wanted, when I've run out of film, a lot of those times, those things have become better because of the restrictions that I bumped up against.
And do you feel that you were able to evolve into that place due to the circumstances because you were prepared, that you had a plan?
No, not in this case. I think this case was just a hot mess. And I was completely disappointed. And I really didn't think, I'm like, Burt Reynolds when he did Boogie Nights and thought, Paul Thomas Anderson was an idiot and Boogie Nights was going to be a disaster and it would ruin his career. It was exactly my situation. I just thought, this is just going to tank and it's never going to be what we hoped it would be. And then, it just took off.
You're good at winging it.
I am. I guess winging it is my story. That's the lesson from this master class. Be very prepared, but wing it.
But that does bring us to the secrets.
Oh, the secrets.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are enough people for me to tell the secrets, too.
You don't think so?
I don't think
They're
so.
all on social media. It's going to travel.
But then they won't be secrets anymore. If you actually tell the secrets, then, we have to agree they're going to be kept in this room. No, I have a presentation that I have been asked to bring to you about some of the secrets of directing and television. We've distilled it for time down to 10, which is the most concise version of secrets ever. So you are seeing the debut of the 10 Secrets presentation that I am going to impart upon you at this very moment in this glorious piece of theater. Let me take off my jacket. This is very serious. Okay, Tim, can I have control? Or do I have a mic here? Tell me when you see a picture. Oh, we have a picture. Okay. So, I think it's always important to add your own applause when you're doing a PowerPoint. That way, if there is no applause, at least there'll be some in your PowerPoint. Okay, so these are the 10 secrets to succeeding in television. I've done this in several continents. I've done it in Australia, I've done it in London, but never 10. So I finally made it concise enough for you to use it and for you to enjoy it as only 10. But there aren't actually 10. I just want to say for the record, there's at least 710 secrets. Today we will only have time for 10. And I also want to mention that you should always be skeptical if someone, even as fabulous as me, tells you that this is what you need to do. Because, who am I? But these 10 secrets have worked for me, and I think they will work for you if you do them all in succession. Number 1 is humility. That's why I bring that actual noise to the humility of it, because I'd like to talk about my own humility, but there aren't enough people here, okay? But what do we mean by that? The first day I was shooting on The West Wing, I had Martin Sheen, who I've seen since Apocalypse Now, and John Spencer, a terrific actor, and I've only done about 20 episodes of television, and it's The West Wing. And so I dealt with it accidentally, sort of, because I had no other choice, with humility. I just went to these guys and just started talking to them about what was going on in their lives. We talked about sobriety. We talked about things that were important to us, our family. We made a personal connection because I wasn't going to talk to Martin Sheen about acting. So we just made a connection. And I always come back to this. This is the most important element of succeeding in television direction. Now, this rabbi, Lord Jonathan Sacks, who's British, defines humility as an appreciation of oneself, one's talents, skills, and virtues. It is not meekness or self-deprecating thought, but the effacing of oneself to something higher. Humility is not to think lowly of oneself, but to appreciate the self one has received. It is in the service to others that is the greatest form of humility. So what I really mean, because when you hear the word, you think it means, oh, you're groveling, you're putting yourself down, you're smaller than other people. What I really mean by humility is that you have an accurate appraisal of yourself, that you know what your talents are, your strengths, and your weaknesses. As I said earlier, when I first started doing this, I knew I needed a lot of help, and I was very open about that, and I let people, I was open in a secretive kind of way, about asking for help with the things I didn't know. So knowing what your strengths are and knowing what your weaknesses are, I had come from a lot of music. I knew about music. I knew how music worked. I knew how music worked in movies because I paid a lot of attention to it, but I didn't necessarily know a lot of other stuff. So knowing what you can do in your sleep and what you need help with is probably the first most important secret. And the second secret is simplicity. This is often, confused by younger directors. Sometimes we think that more complicated is better. I think it's because we've seen too many Quentin Tarantino movies. I think simplicity is the best friend of a director. Finding the simplest way to tell the story. Putting the camera in the place where it receives the most information the audience needs. Moving the camera from one thing you need the audience to see. You want to get that now? Thank you. Just kidding. To another thing you really want the audience to see is what it's about. Sometimes I've sort of gotten caught up in my underwear, the shot that I was very interested in. A shot that I'm very interested in usually means, unless it's really serving the story, that it's bullshit. I mean, you really have to be honest about and think about, how can I do this really simply? And I have to tell you over and over again, sitting in the movies and film festivals like this, take an example of Moonlight. There's so much simplicity in some of those shots that tell you the story and draw you in and make you forget about the fact that it was directed. And that's really what you want. You don't want to draw attention to the direction. You want to make people forget about the direction. So you want to put the camera and you want to lead the actors towards the simplest possible choices. Here I'm telling Ben Warren, also known as Jason George, I don't want you to act. All I want you to do is just look over at the Space Needle and do nothing. And it's one of my best shots coming up in a future episode now, because he's the kind of actor who, when he does that, the stillness in his face tells you more than what he would do by attempting to have an emotion. And then you go to it and you say, what is that? What is he feeling? Which is what I want you to do. I want you to participate, so therefore I want to give you a simple vision where you can enter into the look of it. So I'm always trying to find out what the simplest thing is. I also think in communication, it's really important to just say the essential thing. I make a lot of jokes on the set, and I like to keep it light, but I also like to keep the direction to the simplest possible terms. I don't like to give a long story about why you should be this way. I only want to say boom, 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 and that's it. And if you're talking to an actor and you see them glaze over, or you hear them say, I got it, stop talking. You're done. Now you walk away and you go back. But it's hard because you have some of those you want to say. It's very important. The third most important, and some people can reorder these, I think they're probably in proper order, is gratitude. Now it's interesting that here in this directing class, I'm talking about things that don't necessarily have to do with your ability to direct, but they have everything to do with your ability to direct. I think there is nothing as surprising, refreshing, delightful, and wonderful as a grateful director, and there are too few of them. I have to say, there are too few directors who express the gratitude they have for being in the position of directing. Even if you're directing a picture with your iPhone and your friends, there's a time to be grateful for your friends who showed up on Saturday afternoon to make that iPhone movie with you. And a lot of times we as directors just assume, you're all here, you're all getting paid, you are my workhorses. But I believe that directors who express gratitude get a lot farther. Now, I'm grateful for the hair I once had. That is my high school yearbook picture, by the way. Senior year. I develop an attitude of gratitude and give thanks for everything that happens to you, knowing that every step forward is a step toward achieving something bigger and better than your current situation. I think that when you're really talking about secrets, I wish I didn't have to say this as much. It's like talking about diversity. I'm so tired of talking about it. I wish I didn't have to talk about it all the time. But I do, because people just forget about it. They forget that there is a grip who is pushing that camera, trying to make that shot that you've defined, where you have to boom up at a certain time, at the same time that you're moving left to right, who is working his heart out to make that shot for you, and you just walk right past him at the end of the day. You know, for me, I really look for those people on the set that are doing that. I look for those people. We have a thing called Employee of the Episode now on Station 19. And we created a little Oscar trophy, and the props department engraved it. In every episode, we choose an Employee of the Episode. This episode, it was the boom operator who's actually about 7 feet tall and kind of dances like this as he's doing it, and it's hilarious. But he's also one of the hardest working people on the show. And every week we acknowledge someone, and the whole crew feels acknowledged when you acknowledge even any individual. So I always say be grateful and express it, because look at the famous people I get to hang out with. It's like they're stars all the time. I got to meet the president. That's the real president, not a model. And the real first lady crossing her legs in that cute way in the blue room of the White House. If I wasn't a big-time television director, I'd never meet the last president America shall ever have. But on a serious note, sometimes, like when I made a show called The Bastard Executioner a couple of seasons ago, which we made in Wales. It was for FX with Kurt Sutter. And that looks like a piece of visual effectory or painting, that castle. It's actually an 80-foot tall castle that Welsh people built. And they built it because we asked them to. And they built it in about 3 weeks. And it's really there. I mean, if you go behind it, it's like wood and there's things holding it up. But I am always amazed by all the people who do things better than I ever could. And I have to recognize, I feel as a director, that I am the director because I cannot do any other job on the set successfully. I couldn't even be a script supervisor. I could not be an AD. I could certainly not be a cinematographer. I don't quite know how to work a camera. I can't be an actor. There's so many jobs people do that they do better than me, and I have to tell them I love them because of it. We also have, on Sons of Anarchy, we had a crew, I guess it was kind of a lunch, Crew Appreciation Day we call it. This is something that Kurt Sutter, I know you have a reputation that he's a hard ass, he is not, but we would actually give gifts to the crew, and they'd pick out a thing from a hat, and they'd all get gifts, and they'd be brought up, and it was like Christmas. It was like a holiday, and I absolutely loved it. And sometimes we just have to say thank you to the people who make these things happen. You don't have to, but I suggest it. I also suggest in America that people buy them a meal. I like to buy barbecue myself, but we like to recognize the crew as something they can eat, because then when I tell young directors to do this, even though they say, well, I'm only making so much money, you could spend some money to get the crew a meal, because after you've gone, the crew will say, when's Paris coming back? And what they'll be thinking about is the barbecue. Okay. Also, I know a lot of us are not really humble or grateful naturally. So then I recommend that you act like you are. And you recognize there is enormous power in appearing to be humble or appearing to be grateful. And I tell you, after a while, you're doing it, and before long, you forget about it, and you actually are humble and grateful. So I suggest that you actually do it. Whenever I look at this picture, I mean, this is, the cast of Glee in the season. 2 of them are dead now. 2 of them are this is Glee. It was only a few years ago. And 2 of those kids are no longer with us for tragic reasons. And I think about every day that I'm with the cast or a company of people is that I won't be with them forever. I really won't. And they won't be, my friends, and they won't be in my life, and they won't be doing what they do. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I don't know their future. I can't tell. I could not have predicted that both, those guys would be gone now. But they are. And I'm grateful for the time that we had, and I'm grateful that I told them that I loved them in the time we were working with them, because they were good guys. The next big secret, number 4, is over-preparation, which I've alluded to before. Preparation, not good enough, right, Adam? You need to over-prepare. You need to prepare until your eyes bleed. You need to think about all of the possibilities that could happen. Worse than an ungrateful director is a lazy director. So as I produce shows and I'm working with directors and they're not preparing and they're kind of winging it and they don't even think about what other people need to know they're going to do so they can prepare to help them do what they want to do, it makes me crazy. So for you, I say you start with knowing the show inside out. Any show that you're working on, you just got to know from beginning to end. I don't care if the show's been on for years. I watch every episode. When I did Scandal a couple seasons ago, I had to watch every episode of Scandal up to the episode that I saw, which made my eyes bleed, really. But that's something I had to do in order to do it. I have actually met people who've come to interview me for a job, and this is for you sort of mid-level directors now, and they've not seen the show that I'm working on, that they want a job on. They say, well, I haven't had time to see it, but I hear it's very good. And you know what? I'm going to talk to them for a few more minutes, but they're not getting a job because that tells me who they are. I would never go to meet on a show I haven't seen. And there's a million ways to see any show. If you're coming to see Station 19, you go on Hulu, ABC.com, come on, iTunes. You have no excuse today. You used to have to get like CDs and VHS tapes, but you don't have to anymore. You got to do homework. That's the really important thing. And in this preparation, I also say there is nothing better to do in prep than prep. So when I'm actually preparing to do a script, I read it over and over again. I have my system of breaking it down, and I get all my questions answered. And if for some reason, those of you who work on a network television show that's done with Americans, they don't seem to care about getting the script on time all the time. And so what is the director's responsibility when, as my director that I'm working with right now received a script yesterday, we start shooting Monday? Yes. The script came in the morning, Friday, and we start shooting that script on Monday. So I'm sure the DJ will be super pleased about that. So what I say to him and what I say to her when it's her is now your job is to make sure everybody else is prepared to do the show. Your job is to answer everyone's questions you can, even if you have to spend all weekend doing it. Read the script, say, oh my God, there's a new costume thing in here. There's a different set than what we imagined. You reach out to people. You now, as the daddy, have to just take care of everybody else. The script is late for everyone. It's not just about you. So the show will be better if you are a reassuring presence who is focused on helping all the other departments get the information they need. So you got to be decisive. If you can't decide, you got to get answers to your questions. You got to do it in a shorter period of time. You got to get that information out. That's what's really important in the preparation of lateness. And finally, I just want to remind you that Francis Ford Coppola wrote a book, which you all should read, called The Godfather Notebook, in which he takes the Mario Puzo book, and this is what he did when he was playing The Godfather, and he just made notes in it all, and then he typed up his personal notes. This is how he was going to write and create the movie, and he put them on the opposite page. It's a fascinating book. It just reproduces Francis's actual notes, and it has the book on the other side. But one note really struck me. He said, note to me, there's a lot of people reacting to bad news in this film, i.e. that someone they love is in danger or already dead. This is tough. Think about it and be prepared, Francis. I love that note. I love that note. And you'll find yourself doing different kinds of notes to yourself if you're a writer type too. But that whole idea that even someone at that skill level has to, in advance, consider the problems he's going to face and how he's going to be ready for them is really important. Next, I like a lot of shot lists and storyboards. I know some people don't because it's cool when you're the director. You just come on the set and everyone rehearses and you say, this is where the camera goes. I don't buy that. I think especially if you're newer, you have to let people know what your plan is. You don't have to let the actors know. But it helps if your DP and everyone else knows what your plan is, and then they have to know that it can change. But having a plan is really, really important. So I storyboard action sequences. Anything where someone's in danger is going to be storyboarded by me to make sure we're absolutely clear on all the things that we need. And this is a reproduction of one of my shot lists. I get a little crazy, admittedly, with them, but I give a lot of detail. I give very specific shots, or sometimes just a shooting plan that explains to whoever wants it, except actors, how I plan to do it. I don't do these shot lists. I shoot about 60% of them, is what I was told by an AD that I work with. Because 40% is things that happen that you just can't plan for and things that improve the vision that you have. But I always go into the work having a vision, and that is one of my secrets that has stood me in good stead, along with learning names. It's a big deal when the director knows who you are. And just like when I was talking about with gratitude, it's hard for me. I really have to work on it. I actually have to have my script supervisor prompt me sometimes. I said, who is that guy? The one camera operator, you know, the one with the hair. And then she'll tell me, that's Chris. I go, okay, Chris. But when you say people's names and when you recognize them, no matter what their position is, it empowers you. Trust me on this. People turn around and they are empowered. Just like that Employee of the Month statue, recognition is very important to people, just like it's important to you. One of the second camera assistants that we gave that statue to told me, oh, thank you so much for the statue. I said, well, it was voted on by a secret committee, and which is true. He said, well, I was really thank you because when I took it home and my wife saw it, she cried. And I thought, she said no one had ever acknowledged him at work all the years that he's been a camera assistant. And I thought, that's a hard job. I mean, that is not a job I can do. And he's nailing it when actors aren't on their marks, so I don't have to do another take, so the day ends earlier, and no one has ever said anything to this person. So I like to learn their names. I like to acknowledge them whenever possible. I think it is a secret that will stand you in good stead. I say act as if everyone is important, because everyone is. It's supposed to be a family. I mean, I think all these film sets are really different kinds of families, and you, as the director, make it either a functional family or a dysfunctional one. So I think make it a functional one would be really good. Number 7, be decisive. Now, this seems like a no-brainer, right? But how many indecisive directors have I faced in my day? Here's what I say to you, lo, you youngins who wish to be directors, just decide, because it's okay if it's wrong. And it's okay if it's right. But what's not okay is not saying either. This is a great quote from Theodore Roosevelt. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. And he's absolutely right. And a lot of times when I have made a decision just on my intuition, it's ended up being better. Sometimes a disaster, sometimes I've had to take it back. But generally, people just need you to decide. And when you're indecisive, you lose so much credibility and the whole thing starts to slip away. You know, you just have to say, yes, no, it's blue, this house, we're looking this way. Trucks go here. I just make it up a lot of times. I'm not sure. But people are looking for me for an answer, so I go, yeah, trucks go over there. And then I go, ooh, I told them the trucks go over there, so I guess I can't shoot that way. I try not to reverse myself if I don't have to. But sometimes I have to. But generally, that's what I do. And F. Gary Gray, who used to be an assistant director to me, told me this is his number 1 that I ever told him, which is just decide. And don't worry about whether it's the right decision. It can be changed, it can be fixed, it could be right and you don't know it. Just say yes or no. Just get it done. Number 8 is collaborating with actors. And I have seen the meat puppet approach, what I call you have a vision, you want the actors to stand here. I had one director in treatment actually come out onto the set while filming and push Hope Davis just a couple inches to the right. She never spoke to him again. Fortunately, it's only a 2-day shoot per episode, so it wasn't that bad. But I know you have an imagining. I know you want this to be the next Moonlight or There Will Be Blood, whatever is your taste. But there are actors who are actual humans, I must remind you, and they really want to be collaborated with. They really want you to listen to them. They really want you to impart your vision, but also be open to their ideas. And a lot of directors forget this because you have worked so hard and you have prepared so hard and you have this solid vision, and an actor can throw you for a curve. So I say negotiate, but collaborate, and listen and be open, have an idea, but let them swing you one way or another. Give them a take just for free. Let them make you laugh in a line that you saw was very serious. It's okay. A lot of the times you will eventually put that in the movie and you will take credit for it. That's what I do. That's one of my secrets that's not in here. That's 11. Take credit for all the good things other people give you. And there's a corollary to this collaborating with actors, which I call be the director each actor needs. You cannot be one director. If you have a company of actors, you have to be a different director for every actor because every actor truly needs a different director. So you have to find out, if you're doing NYPD Blue, Dennis Franz was very technical, not emotional. He's nothing like Sipowicz.
He's very intellectual. He reads the New York Times in the morning with little half glasses. He puts the glasses down and he becomes Sipowicz. But it's all artificial. I mean, he doesn't feel anything Sipowicz feels, and he doesn't need to produce his feelings in order to be Sipowicz. So you can tell him, yo, that needs to be louder. You need to do this. Can you make this a little more racist? You can say things like that to Dennis Franz, but you cannot say that to Jimmy Smits, because Jimmy Smits does bring the character from the internal and does think through what he's doing and does feel everything the character's feeling. So now I got two guys, often in the same scenes, that need to be directed in two completely different ways. And it is my responsibility to provide that. I have to talk to them differently, and I have to treat them differently. And I have to give Jimmy a lot more takes than I have to give Dennis, and I have to adjust no matter who they are. The same thing with Glee. There are so many people with so many different levels of experience. Some of them really needed an acting coach, but some of them just needed encouragement. And so just figuring out the posse. Here I have three different. There I am actually filming that scene. It shot of me looking so young and gorgeous with Jimmy. God, I used to be hot. And there I am arguing with Juliana Margulies because she was the producer and she has ideas. And she did remember that I got her SAG card by putting her in a McDonald's commercial, so she kind of owes me. Nevertheless, it's called The Good Wife, not The Good Director. So I had to state my case, and she won. And that's just the way it went. And then Ed Sheeran, who appeared in The Bastard Executioner, he learned his lines like songs because that's the only way he could do them. He had to have someone say the line as if it were music. And that person was the person he acted with, actually. It became the person who interpreted the line for him, and then he would be fine. But he had no other way of actually remembering or actually acting other than to imitate someone doing it almost beat by beat, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. And that's the way it goes. So being the director each actor needs means making decisions, also being clear and decisive and not rude, but also saying the minimum required to make the idea clear. Make everything you do about the story. As number 9, we're almost at the end now. There is a tendency in today's filmmaking world to marvel. I keep bringing up Quentin Tarantino because he irritates me so much. But I could use lots of examples. There are lots of what I call shot makers. I have lasted this long and done so many different genres of things because I tried to make it about the story. So I could do Sons of Anarchy and Glee at the same time, and I was alternating between those two shows, which could scarcely be more different. But I just would go to the story. What is the story that I'm telling, and therefore what does it need? It all comes from there. And a lot of times young directors will tell me, I have this great idea for a shot. And I said, but what does that have to do with the story you're telling? Why do you need the camera to snorkel over the ground through the weeds to appear? How does that enhance what they typed? And a lot of times they don't have answers. Sometimes they do, and they win, and they get the special equipment. And I say, go do that special shot. But sometimes I can tell it's just something they become infatuated with or they saw in a movie that they want to replicate. That's not directing, that's imitating miscellaneous stuff you saw. So directing is actually saying, if the camera needs to be a certain place to tell a story. Like in the clip you saw from NYPD Blue, I knew the reveal of the kid would be very important, but first I wanted the hands to touch. I wanted Bobby in his dream to touch his son that he never saw his hand, and then to slowly move up and reveal the kid's face, and cut immediately to the hands touching between him and Sipowicz. Because I love the idea that Sipowicz is in many ways his child, and Sipowicz grew up on his watch. And so something in the touch of Sipowicz connected to the touch of the child. I knew that would work, but it's very simple. It was a pan. I was trying to do something. What is the simplest move I can make that will make this connection? And then it's a cut. So a lot of times shots are not your friend. And finally, number 10, find your shoes. So many directors have neglected their shoes. And that's why I'm telling you, you need the right shoes. I'm also telling you this because Steven Spielberg told me this, and I know that looks like another Steven Spielberg cutout, because he always looks like a cutout in his pictures. Doesn't he look a little like we're standing around, two Latinos and a black man, a cutout of Steven Spielberg? Anyway, he was the first person that I heard that it's all about your shoes, and that he takes off his shoes and gets a new pair of shoes after lunch. But I've taken that on. So through my life, I started out when I was doing NYPD Blue, I wore hush puppies. I had all these hush puppies. What was I thinking? They're not orthopedically correct. Then I moved to Asics, which were more orthopedically correct, but, still not quite right. I had a little flirtation with Merrill's, trying to find the right, because I got it at the foot store, the walking store, whatever it's called. But now I've found my dream shoe. It's a Hoka, also known as a Hoka. I don't know, where do they come from? Australia somewhere? It's New Zealand. I was close. They come from New Zealand, and they're sort of wedged like that old, what was that shoe back in the day that had that? What was that? What was it? It had that sort of wobble shape like the base of this. And I said, that's ridiculous. But they are really comfortable and really light. And another director in my first-time director's program said they're the best shoes, and they were only $110. So I ordered them on the line. And they really are working for me. This has been about 3 months ago. So the point is, you got to take care of yourself and your feet, because you're going to be on them for a really long time. And those of you who have been directing know that at the end of the day, from running to set and back and forth, unless you're someone who sits at the monitor all the time, in which case you're just going to gain weight. But if you're an active director who's moving in and out from the set, you need some really good shoes. Adam, what are your shoes? Do you do the Nikes? I don't find enough support in the Nike.
The $80 on sale Nikes.
Oh, do you put anything in them?
Yeah, I have arch supports. But it's true, you're standing on cement in stages all day long. You're on asphalt. Your back starts to hurt. It's the most important thing.
And all those things come out in, obviously, your effectiveness in the job and how you treat people, and it all comes back to, can you be grateful and humble, beautiful and simple if your feet are really hurting? And the answer is no. So those are the 10 secrets to succeeding as a director of television.
We've got a little bit of time left for audience questions.
Yay!
Yeah, audience questions for Paris. My favorite part of the process.
Are these pre-approved?
They are not. They're, does anybody have any questions? Yes,
I like
sir.
it when they're pre-approved. Like when you have cards. Oh, I guess it's too late. Hello.
Being with us today. It's been so inspiring. Hi. My question is about cinematographers. Being one myself, I always try to be as appealing to a director and producer as possible. So I want to ask you, what's the biggest key parts of a cinematographer that you work for that you'd want to bring back over and over?
I like it when they actually read my shot list, because sometimes they don't. I like it if they're additive. I call additive, like Oliver Bokelberg, who I'm working with now in Station 19. He shot The Station Agent. He's a real DP. And our other DP is Darren Okada, who shot Mean Girls and is a great filmmaker. So I like it when they contribute. A lot of directors are threatened by them, but I kind of want them to say, did you look at the shot from over here? Did you see? If I could put that shot together, I could do both the shots that you want in one. I kind of want that collaboration, but not every director does. You got to figure out that right away. But I think the most important thing is that they not get sour and mean. 50% of cinematographers I've gotten get really mean with their own crew. And that I don't like. I just don't like that. And I see them, they're really nice to me, but then I hear them just jumping on the best boy or something like that, and it just really irritates me. So if you're going to be on my show and you want to keep getting jobs, you got to be additive. You got to read my shot list, and you got to take care of your crew. Otherwise, I'm not going to have you.
Anybody else? Yes. Trapped.
Trapped. You have to shout. I'll point it at you.
Sure. When you're voting for the Emmys or the DGA awards, what are you looking for in Best Directing?
That's a really good question to ask. When you're voting for these awards, what are you looking for Best Directing? I think I am the only person who votes them who actually looks for directing. Because most people who look at them cannot tell writing from directing. They really can't. And so they just applaud the show in general. But they're not really. What I'm looking for is, what has the director done, and usually what has the director done quietly and not obtrusively, to make this greater than it is. It's hard, and sometimes you can't know because you don't have the script in front of you. So a lot of times I'm just surmising, but I'm saying, is the actual way the camera moves, the way the performers are, elevating this particular episode of a TV show? Usually I don't like to vote for shows I don't know. Like, just for me to see one episode of a show I don't know,
I'm not able to really vote for it. But if it's Homeland or something I watch, I can see a Leslie Lincoln Glatter episode coming a mile away. I can see the care that she takes with performances. So basically, I'm trying to ferret out in my own mind, did the director actually add something to this that the writing didn't accomplish? And I'm guessing that I'm better at it than anybody else. I may not be, but that's what I do.
We have time for one more. Yes, sir.
Do you like explosions?
The question was, does he like explosions?
I love explosions, as you can tell.
Okay, one more. Yes, sir.
I know this person.
Hey,
Uh-oh.
Will you tell your story?
No. You
You got to tell your story. Pretend like you. Come on.
Okay, listen. I'm the witness. I'm the person who was the P. I was a PA on Mama Said Knock You Out and Around the Way Girl. The video.
You were
that
in
Paris-
Around the Way Girl.
He forced me to be in Around the Way Girl. He forced me to be an actor in it when I was just a PA on the side. He's like, Jeff, get in there.
But now he's a big-time director here shooting in Vancouver.
And now, I'm here directing Vancouver. I'm doing an episode of Charmed, the series here.
Yay.
And if it wasn't for Paris, I mean, I was a PA at Black and White TV. If it wasn't for him, I saw the vision. Like, you can be what you see. And thanks to him and Spike Lee, I could see that I could become a director. And sitting on a set, and before that, I had PA'd for nothing but white male directors, and I couldn't see it, so I figured I wanted to be a cameraman or something like that. But when I saw him and Spike, it became something that I could be. And then when I saw him on set, his work ethic, and as much as he says Paris is great, but he's got a lot of BS with him because he knew what he was doing when they shot Mama Said Knock You Out. Cinematically, he knew what he was doing. Obviously, LL was lost somewhere in the ether, but cinematically, those shots were out of the mind of Paris Barclay. Those shots would not have been that way had Paris not already pre-envisioned them. So I don't want him to sit here and let you guys think it's all by accident. He's very cinematic.
Kind of is.
He's very cinematic. Don't.
I ripped off Raging Bull.
No, you did, but you did it in a different way. You did it in a very hip-hop way. But I do have a question, though. My question is, being past president of the DGA, and now that we're here in Canada and the DGC, could you just tell the audience some of the benefits of being a guild member and what that actually means? Because I didn't know what that meant when I first wanted to be a director. I just thought directing was directing, and what's a union? I didn't know anything about that. And then when I became a part of the guild, thankfully due to Paris, I learned actually what that meant and how it benefits us in terms of pensions and all that. Could you just give a little bit?
Just the short version of it is, I wouldn't have a life as a director if it were not for the union. I might be able to direct occasionally, but I wouldn't be able to make it a life and raise a family without the union. Because what the unions do, and the DGC and the DGA work out very closely together, and we have a reciprocal agreement, and we're friendly, and we like to do things together. But what we're basically doing is protecting our members so that when they go to all these different sets with all these different producers, they can be sure that someone will have their back. They can be sure that someone will pay them and that it will be a certain rate. And if they work on the holidays, they'll be paid. And that some of that payment will go to their health plan so that they can have one of the best health plans in the world, actually. And they can have insurance if there should be some calamity. Now, lately with my family, all four of us in the family have had different health issues. And I've had to do all these claims with the DGA, and it's not just because I'm a high earner, but this happens to every member who's in that club, as it were. They're taken care of. I mean, they're really. I was hospitalized for one day a few weeks ago, where one day I had to stay overnight in the hospital. I said, "This is going to kill me. I'm in Ronald Reagan Hospital. This is going to be so expensive." And I get back the thing, and it's 100% covered. It's in the UCLA, it's in the network, and blah 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 blah. So all those back things are helpful. I'll say one other thing. I did one movie. Some of you have seen it. Don't say the name out loud. All right, I'll tell you. Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood was the one film that I directed, and it was a terrible experience. But I did have a lot of DGA help getting through it and protecting me. And when it was being re-edited behind me, the DGA got involved. And when they didn't want to pay me the residuals, the DGA audited the film and made sure that they paid me. And it was fairly substantial because, oddly enough, that little junky film has made a lot of money that Miramax and Harvey Weinstein did not wish to pay me. But the union does things that one individual person can't. because they represent everybody. The DGC or the DGA can go where a single individual person just can't go, and stand up for them. And that's why I found it so helpful, because without it, as a young director, now as an old director, I see it so essential to my livelihood and the livelihood of my family. And it's just made me incredibly proud to be a member.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and joining us in a conversation with Paris Barclay.